Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Today, what I wanted to talk about is some more fun InDesign stuff. But I want to, let me share my screen real quick. And what I have on the on the Zoom meeting, as far as what we're going to talk about, is creating a text wrap in Adobe InDesign. And text wraps are used quite frequently in a lot of graphics. I have my second camera hooked up here, so I'm going to revert to that real quick. Just turn that on. I can get to my camera. Okay. And I'm going to point this camera to a catalog that utilizes, here's a good example of a simple text wrap. This is a catalog for a company called B&H Photo, which sells photographic equipment, but this could be any catalog. And what they're doing here is they're selling a bunch of TVs, and there are lots of descriptive copy as far as what these TVs do, what the prices are, and so forth. So this would be a perfect example of why you would want to use paragraph styles or character styles like we went through the other day. But one of the things to look at is notice the TV and notice how the type wraps around that image. And so that's what I want to kind of talk about. I want to talk about how to do that in InDesign, but also how to do a more custom text wrap where you have, a certain shape that you need the text to follow. So let me put that down, switch back here. And so let me kind of get right to it. And this is something that, again, you can use in your national parks brochure if you want. This is something that, because there's a lot of outlined objects that we talked about that were used in that one Cabrillo National Monument brochure, a text wrap might be something that you might want to do. So let me share my screen and go right to InDesign. And I'm going to go back to the page that we were on the other day when we were talking about character styles. And just to kind of review very quickly what we talked about, we set up a typography panel here where we had all of these different choices here for typography. And one of the things was paragraph styles. We created a paragraph style called body copy. And then we also created a character style, a couple of them. One was called subheads and one was called prices. And we kind of set up this example here with that. And I'm going to, just go through this very quick again and just set this up. And I'm going to grab all of this and bring it up to the top here. I will zoom in a little bit so we can see where we are. And okay, so the first thing I want to do real quick is I'm going to change out this these subheads here. And so here's the subheads. I'm going to double click on the subheads. Oops. And yikes, I didn't want to do that. Let me cancel out of that and undo that. Okay, so what I want to do is click my subheads over here. No, I don't want to do that. I'm sorry. Because I have my text tool and I had that selected. Okay, so now if I click subheads, okay, so I'm going to go to my subheads now and double click on that. And change the subheads to change the color of those subheads to black. Okay, so I'm going to go to black, and instead of 50% black, I'm going to make it 100% black. All my subheads change. That's a nice feature of character styles. I'm going to leave my prices in red, and then I'm going to go to my paragraph styles and double click on my body copy, and I can't stand this magenta body copy here, so I'm going to go change the color of that, which is character color, and we'll change this to, say, a gray. How about gray? So I'll change it to black, and then I'll change the tint to, say, 70% black, which is a gray. Okay, I'll click OK. And you can see that that changed in the entire document, so that's nice. If I hit my W key and turn it off, okay, so that's kind of what I'm going for. That's the look that I'm going for. And I did that very quickly through my character styles and paragraph styles. And just, again, to repeat, character styles change just the text that it was highlighted or the text that you wanted to be subheads. It did not affect the paragraph. But paragraph styles, even though you change characters, fonts, and point sizes, the minute you do that in a paragraph style, it's going to change all of the formatting. So if you had indents, it's going to indent. If you had space after or space before, it's going to apply those attributes. So in a sense, we want to use character styles for some things and paragraph styles for paragraph formatting. Okay, that was a very quick glossing over of that. Okay, so now, oh, one other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention that I was fishing around for the other day was under alignment. Okay, if you go to basic character, or if you go to indents and spacing, the alignment was right here in front of my face. And right now the alignment is left, so you can change it to centered, right, justify, whatever. So the alignment is part of a character style or a paragraph style, and you can change it here. Okay. So now let's say that we have an image, and we, whether it's a photograph or a TV or whatever, and we want to have the text wrap around that image. And so I'm going to just download an image real quick. So let me go to my Google Images here, and I'll just type in flowers or something. Okay, get a bunch of images of flowers. And let me just download something very quick. Okay, whatever. Don't want to do that. Okay, so let's say it's this photo right here. I'm going to hold down the control click and save this image to my desktop, and I'll call it flowers. I'll save it to the desktop, and I'll click save. So there it is right there. It'll come in as flowers. Get rid of this. Okay. Go back to InDesign. Here's my flowers JPEG, and I'm going to place it inside of this document. So I'll do File or Command D or Control D on a PC. And I'll go to my desktop, and I'll grab my flower JPEG here, and I'll open that up. And I'll click and drag a box and place that flower right there. Now, if I place this flower on top of this text, you can see that it kind of has a white background to it. I didn't knock the background out, but it's got a white background to it, and it goes on top of the text. The other thing I can do is send this to back over Object Arrange and send it to back, and now the text goes on top of the photo. So what I really want to happen is I want I'm going to send this back to the front. What I want is the text to repel this box. And I'm going to crop this box a little bit. Okay, so even though it has a white background, I want the text to wrap around this, this object. So I'm going to select this object, and with your selection tool, you select the object, and then you go up here to your text wrap options, which are in this area right here at the top. You have no text wrap, you have wraparound bounding box, you have wraparound object shape, and you have jump the object. I think a lot of these are self-explanatory. Wraparound object shape is what we want. So if I select this box and I click this wraparound object shape, now you can see where, I'm going to close this down here, where the text is now going to wrap around this object. So if I bring this object in to this text and place it over it, oops, sorry, don't want to do that. I want to move this in here. You can see that wherever I move it, because it has a wraparound object shape attached to it, attribute attached to this, wherever I move this, that text is going to repel this square. If I kind of move this down like that, there you go. That's kind of what I wanted in the first place. If I pull this out, it springs back to the column measure. Okay, here's my columns here. Hit my W key so I get my columns back on. So let's say you wanted this photo to sit on your grid right there, okay, and maybe be about this big to there, to that grid right there. Lock onto that grid right there. Okay, so that makes this repel around this wherever you move it. So if I move it out and I bring it over here, then suddenly this repels and this repels. So if I hit my W key and click off, we have this kind of situation going. So it's as easy as bringing in an object, an image, and applying this text wrap to it. Now this one over here said jump object. So if I made this smaller, let's say, I'm going to reduce the size of this. And if I place this right in the middle of this text, you can see that the text jumps over the object and continues on here. Now, normally you would never want to do that because that makes it really difficult to read. In fact, if you did something like this and people were reading up to here, they would tend to probably read this line before they jumped over the object to read this line. So this is not something that we use a lot, but it's there as a feature. I'm sure that there's uses for it, but anyway, that's what that is, jump object. In this case, we're going to use the just wraparound bounding box. Okay, we can place this here, and you can see how that text nicely wraps around that object. Okay, but what if we wanted, and this might be a good example to use. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to place this in here. Okay, you can see how the text wraps around this. But what if we wanted the text to kind of wrap around the shape here? How would we do that? Okay, the way we do that is, first of all, we would select this object and do the same one, wrap around object shape. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to modify this bounding box. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to select this tool right here, which is the direct selection tool. And notice when I I'm on the selection tool, and I don't know if you can see, you can see when I zoom in, but you can see this line and these bounding boxes here. When I grab this, when I select the direct selection tool, you notice how these corner nodes ended up being really small. And we see this when I hover over this object, I get this gold box. When I'm on the selection tool, you can see that these are handles that you can size, the box smaller or crop. When I get on the direct selection tool, it changes. The whole attributes change. Okay, what I want to do here, first of all, so I want to crop this down here. Oops. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Okay, anyway, what I want to do is I want to get on this direct selection tool, and I'm going to get on this pen tool here, and I'm going to start popping in some points on this line, on this blue line here. And if you notice, as I get the pen tool close to this line, the pen tool turns into a plus sign. There's a little plus sign that happens next to the pen tool. And that means that I can add points. And I don't know, that's really small to see, but there's a little node that was added there. And so I'm going to add several nodes around this blue line here. Okay, I'm just going to grab a bunch. Now you can take these off, you can delete them, you can add more later if you need to. But once I add a bunch of these points, what I'm going to do is get back on the direct selection tool. And I'm going to start grabbing these points and start pulling them in around and bending them around this shape. And as I do that, I'm going to grab this one and bend it around. And as I do that, oh, okay. You know why? Because this has this this image here has a white background to it, and this white background is preventing me from yeah, the white background is preventing me from yep, sorry, can't use this shape because it's got a white background to it. All right, let's get rid of that, and let's get a shape that has the background knocked out, because you would need an image with the background knocked out. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring in another image. So let me go File, Place. And let me get this image here that I have of an elk. Fall. Use this for my 148 class. Okay, this picture of an elk. Okay, right here. This is a good example. So I'll click Open, and then I'll just kind of place this elk right here. Okay, now this elk, there's no background to it. This is all transparent. So now I'll select the elk here as a wraparound. Okay, and I see that brown line here. And when I move this in, okay, oops, don't want to do that. When I move this in, we can see it wraps around the bounding box. But now when I grab the pen tool and I add some points, and you'll know you can add points when you see the plus sign there, right there on the pen tool. I'll click a point there. I'll click several points around here. And then I'll get on my direct selection tool. And now when I pull this in, you'll see the actual, oops, type start changing. I need to add some more points here. Okay, so I'll grab this and pull this in. And you can see how the type is now starting to wrap around this object. Need some more points here, so I'll add some more points to my line. Let me add a few more, get on my direct selection tool again, and I'll pull this in and pull this in and pull this in. Okay, so now I have a very distinct text wrap around this object here. So if I click and let go, you can see now how the text is wrapping around the contour of this. If I want to make adjustments, I can just click on this. And if I wanted to pull this in a little bit, I can pull this in a little closer and see how it made that adjustment here. And then the nice thing about that is because this now has this contour around it, wherever I move this image, it's always going to wrap around that particular contour. So if I back out of this and I wanted to move this over here, it automatically wraps around that contour that I made. Now, because this type is set, notice how the type is set align left and ragged right. And I think we talked about how this is an alignment that is the easiest to read. But let's say we wanted this alignment to be justified. Okay, so I'm going to go over back to my paragraph styles here. And I'm going to click on body copy. Double click. And I'm going to change the alignment here. Instead of left, I'm going to change it to justify, full justify. Okay. And watch what happens to the edges of this text when I fully justify. See how it's nice and flush? Okay. What actually happened too is these prices changed because they must have been part of this paragraph. This shouldn't really. Anyway, click OK. All right. So now when I move this in, the wrap might look a little bit nicer. Okay. You see how the wrap justifies around the elk. Come up here. And we have a much nicer wrap. Now I can go in here. Let me zoom in. Grab my direct selection tool. Click on the object. I'll see my points. And now I can go in and really, I might want to, I want to change that, move that up a little bit. You can see how this is moving now much better because it's justified text. I can pull this out a little bit and see how it just scoots over a little one. And what you'd want to do in a situation like this is you want this space to be even. Okay, so that's kind of nice. That looks nice when you have this even white space around. If I wanted to move the elk in deeper, okay, if I wanted to pull this in. Also, if you click and hold, you can watch the elk kind of move in. Okay. And you can see how everything kind of changes. Now there's something weird that's going on here. So yeah, you still have to kind of see where you're at. You see that space in here, which I'm not crazy about. So I could adjust that by clicking on the elk and maybe moving this point over here up a little bit. Moving this up and scooting that underneath. So that line kind of scoots in underneath. Okay, so that looks a little bit better. There's something wrong happening up here. Let me see what's going on. Oh, okay, I see. So this point right here might have to move a little bit, maybe move up like that. Yeah, we have some funny kind of thing going on here, but anyway, you get the picture. Command 0. Okay, so that is how to do a custom text wrap around a specific object that has no background. But if your object has a square background, I mean, if it's like a square cut photo with a background like that flower, it's only going to repel around the box itself. So if I brought that flower back in again, just click and drag that flower in and designate it as a text wrap here around the bounding box. Crop this a little bit. And bring this in, you can see that it is only going to repel around that bounding box. I can't get it to follow the curve unless I knock the background out. So you might want to utilize this technique of text wrap in your layout. Whether it's a square cut photo, what we call a square cut photo, doesn't necessarily have to be square, it could be rectangle, or a circle, or, you know, you can wrap text around, but always remember to have your text on a grid, sitting on a grid. And I'm just looking at this block of text right now, and that's something that I should mention because I see it, so I'll mention it. But we know the different alignments of text. We know that we can have align left, which is the easiest to read. If I highlighted this block of text right here and I changed it to align left, okay, this is a much easier read than justified. Now, justified might look nice when you're looking at columns of text because it's nice and neat and it flushes left and it flushes right. But when you have a narrow column like this and you use justified text, you can really see the word spacing problem. And justified text means that it's both a line left and a line right. And the way the computer does it is it takes the amount of words and it says, okay, if these are the words that you have, I'm going to insert space, random space. So look at this second line right here, right? Look at this gaping hole here. And that's because this word down here wouldn't fit, even if, you know, in one line. So the tolerance is too much. So it opens this up. So this is terrible. I mean, we much rather have this situation than the previous. Now, the problem with this situation is that you do get a very distinct rag on the right side. But more important to have it read correctly than to have it read like that. I mean, that's terrible. So you have to be careful about justified text. The rule of thumb with justified text is that when you have a long column, like I'm going to just set just a random block of justified text here. I'm going to set this and fill it with placeholder text. Okay. And when you have a long column, like you see here, then justified text, the word spacing all in here looks you know, it looks even. It doesn't really disrupt the reading. But the minute you start shortening your column width, then you start getting more and more problems. Like once that column width is like that short, you're going to start getting gaping holes between words. And that's not good because it gets it very spotty and makes the reading slower. Okay, so keep your justified text columns wide enough where you don't have that problem. Even here in this line right here, you can see that there's lots of word spacing here and here. And then some lines will be really tight where there's hardly any word spacing. So just something to bring up since I saw that here. Yeah, I don't really like this setting of justified text, so I'm going to go back to the paragraph styles and change the body copy alignment, indents and spacing back to left, and everything changes. So that's much better. So that little thing is what, all that I really wanted to talk about today. You have this to work on. Next week on Tuesday, we will dive into some Photoshop exercises, and I'll again check your progress on your national parks brochure. You have both sides that you're working on. So, do any of you have any questions regarding anything? You could just say yes or no.
I actually have a question.
Okay.
On how to, I know we did this in 148, but I forgot to like buff out a photo because I wanted to buff out a few of my photos in the brochure. Like to fade
Okay.
it.
When you say buff out, you mean extract the background?
No.
Oh, okay.
Like we did it in the travel brochure and I know the movie poster, like
Mm-hmm.
fade it out.
Oh, you mean fade the background out?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Make it kind of a soft fade into nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we call that a vignette. Vignette.
Okay.
So let me show you how to do that. Let me take a photo with the background and do that for you. Well, flowers are okay. Yeah, well, let's see. Let's find one that has lots of, okay, how about this one here? Okay. This picture right here has lots of background. Let's say we wanted to highlight just this flower right here, just this section right here. So let me download this photo. I'm sorry, save image. And I'll just call this Rose, and I'll save it to the desktop. Okay, so here's our rose. I'm going to grab this rose and bring it into Photoshop. I can get Photoshop to launch here, and let me just launch it. Yeah, vignettes are really nice. It's kind of a nice soft effect. It's nice for greeting cards and things like that. Okay. So
Sorry, it wasn't on Lightroom, it was Photoshop?
it was Photoshop, yeah. We did
Okay.
it in Photoshop.
Okay.
Okay, so let me go to the desktop and get that rose JPEG and open that up. Okay, and it's very small. Okay, it's very pixelated photo. This is not a very good photo to work with. I'm sorry. You know what? Let's just get something better than that. What is what is happening here? Okay, this is better. This photo's better. Let me bring this up. This has much higher resolution. Okay, so let's say we want to just extract this flower right here, this green one in the center, and we want to fade all these other flowers out into transparency. I'm going to do that with, there's many tools that you can use to do that. But the first thing I'm going to do is make this an editable layer, a fully editable layer. So on this background layer, I'm going to double click and make that a layer. You can call it flower if you want or whatever, but I'll just leave it layer 0. I'm going to use this tool right here, which is the lasso tool. Now, if it was circular in shape or an oval and you weren't too particular about the actual contour of this, you can just use the, the rectangular marquee or the elliptical marquee tool. Both will do the same thing, but I'll use the lasso tool. Choose that. I'm going to zoom into this so that you can see what I'm going to do. And you see the point of the lasso tool right there. I'll put it in some white area. See where the arrow is? That's where it starts drawing from. So this is where you're going to have to kind of clear your desk space a little bit so that your mouse can move in one continuous motion. Because if you stop and let go, you're going to stop the selection. So you're going to have to do it over again. But I'm going to just kind of draw, click and drag, and I'm going to draw around this. Now you don't have to be that perfect about it because you're going to create a vignette, which you're not even going to see. But what you want to do is you want to connect it to where you started. So once you hit close to there, just let it go, and you'll see the marching ants go around your selection here. And if you messed up, just do Command D and deselect, and you can draw again. Okay, but I'll do Command Shift Z and bring it back. Oops. Sorry. Oh, I think I missed it. Let me do that again. I'll just kind of roughly go around this. Selected. Okay. So once we have this selection, what we want to do is create a mask. And we can add a mask here down at the bottom, or we can do it kind of a faster way. What we want to do is feather this selection. We want to soften it as it goes out to the outer edges. We want it to be soft. So that's under select and under modify and under feather or feathering, or the shortcut key is Shift F6 if your computer's set up that way. But I'm going to go this way, select, modify, and feather. And then this radius here determines how softly you want it to fade. And the amount of pixels that you choose for this radius all depends on the resolution of your image. So if you have a very high resolution image, if there's a lot of pixels in this image, then this wants to be a greater value. But if it's a very low resolution image, then this could be a lower value. So this looks like it's a fairly high resolution image. I'm going to start with 50. Now, when you click OK, you're going to see this selection, these marching ants shrink. It's going to shrink around the selection. And the degree that it shrinks kind of gives you an idea of how soft this fade is going to be. So I'm going to click OK and see what happens. Okay, yeah, it shrunk quite a bit. See how that marching ant shape really changed its shape. So that tells me that that's going to be a pretty soft fade. Okay, let's see what it looks like though. And we'll do from here, we'll go up to layer, and we're going to go down to layer mask. Okay, and this is going to automatically create a mask for you. This is where I say it's easier to do it this way. And then we're just going to kind of reveal the selection. We don't want to reveal anything else but what's inside of this selection. Okay, so layer mask, reveal selection. And when we do that, we can see the fade. Okay, now the little checkerboard over here means that this is transparent. It means that there's nothing here. So if we place this on top of, another document, the background of that document would show through. Okay. Now, honestly, this looks pretty severe. I mean, this looks pretty soft. In fact, it looks too soft. So I'm going to go back in history. Here's your history palette or your history button in Photoshop. And I'm going to go back to the part where we feathered the selection. Okay, actually where we did our last lasso selection. And I'm going to go up and refeather this, select, modify, and feather. And instead of 50 pixels, I'm going to go less, okay, because 50 was too much. So I'm going to go, let's say, half of that, 25. I'll click OK. You can see the shrink. And then I'll, again, go to Layer, Layer Mask, and Reveal Selection, see what that looks like, okay? Now that's looking a little bit better. It's not as soft. You don't see as much. And we're seeing now more of the flower than before. Before it was kind of too much. Now let me just go back again and do this a third time just so that you can see, what a modified selection of very little pixels would do. I'm going to do 10 pixels this time. Click OK. You can see this selection shrunk, but it didn't shrink that much. And then we'll go to Layer, Layer Mask, and Reveal Selection. Okay, and so now you see a very kind of sharper fade or blur. This might be a little severe, and so I kind of like more of the 20 pixels rather than 10 pixels. Or so I'm just going to go back to that and try. I'm sorry, go back to layer, modify, feather. And your feather radius will always stay on the last feathering that you chose. So, tomorrow, if you come back to feather, it's always going to be 10 because that's the last thing you left it at. So I'm going to try 25 again and click OK. And then layer, layer mask, reveal selection. And I like that a little bit better. Okay, so once you've done that, we don't need all of this space around here. We don't need all of this, open transparency space. So you might want to crop your photo at this point. Be careful though that you don't crop in so tight that you start cropping out some of this fade. And it's kind of hard to know where it ends. So I would get on the crop tool here and I might start, give yourself a pretty wide crop here. And I might come in a little bit here, a little bit here. Again, don't get too close here because you'll cut it off. And then when you place this on a dark background, you'll see that hard edge right there. So open it up enough where, okay, but you can still crop in something like that. And then I'll click return, hit return and set that. Now, once I have this, I want to export this out or save it out. So I'm going to go up to File and Save, or Save As. I'll just save this to my desktop and I'll call this flower vignette, Vignette. Okay. And I will use the PNG format because that preserves transparency. Don't use JPEG, okay, because you'll get a white background. I'll use PNG. You can actually use Photoshop too, but it creates a real large file. So PNG, and I'll save it to the desktop. So I'll click Save. Click OK. And there is my flower knockout. And then I'll go back to, let's say, InDesign. And let's just say, for the sake of this, we had a colored background. Okay, so let me just draw a box here. And I'll color this box. Where's my swatches? Oh, let's say blue or so. And turn off my guides. Okay, so now I want this photo sitting in here, and I'll do Command D or Control D, select my flower vignette, click Open. And if I click and place it, there it is, and it preserves the transparency because it's a PNG file. I'll grab this and I'll place it on my blue thing, and there you go. Okay. And or you can select it as a text wrap like we did. And very quickly, I'll just start popping points here with my pen tool. Start bringing this in and start shaping this around. So you get two birds with one stone here. Okay, so I've made this kind of curve, and Command 0. Now I'll move this into, let me make this a little bit smaller. I'll move this into here, and you can see how it's repelling around that shape, around that curve. So I have this vignette, and if I zoom in here, get on my direct selection tool, you can see where those points are, and now I can adjust them and make this text come in a little closer, or push it out a little bit. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, it's recorded, so you can go back and look at the recording, and that'll show you how to do this this technique. But it's called vignetting, and it's in Photoshop, and it's pretty easy to do. If you wanted to extract the exact edge of this flower without it fading, that would require probably, a more intricate type of extraction that you would have to use with maybe an outlining tool, like with the pen tool, and start and actually draw around the shape. Now, one other thing before I go here is, let's say that you did this. Now, you always want to save this. You always want to save this file as a Photoshop file, because then you have your mask. And if you ever have to go back to this, then you can make changes. So let's say you wanted to go back to this image here. And let's say you wanted to soften up this selection here, this background. You wanted to kind of eliminate some more of it, but keep it nice and soft. So in that case, you could select your mask here. Okay, just click on your mask and see the black area. The black means that it's being covered up, and the white is what is being revealed. Okay, so we say white reveals and black conceals. So black is concealing and white is revealing. So if we take this mask, if we select the mask and we get a brush out, which is our brush over here, our brush tool for B. And over here in your palette here, your foreground and background color, it usually defaults to black and white. Let me just move this over here so you can't see. The white is the foreground color and the black is the background color. And if you get out a brush and you hit your bracket keys on your keyboard, your right bracket and left bracket keys, that makes your brush bigger or smaller. So I'm going to just hit my right bracket key. You can see my brush getting bigger. And if I paint with white, which is the foreground color, I'm going to start opening up more of this photo. In other words, as I press with white, you can see I'm starting to reveal more of the photo. Okay, I'm going to Command Z that, undo that. If I wanted to reveal more of the photo, but not so strong, I'll come up to my opacity and I'll really lower my opacity to say, oh, maybe even like 20. And then as I click and press and drag, I'm starting to add more of the photo, but in a very softer way. Okay. Now I'll undo that, Command Z. At 20%, as I paint, if I keep painting and painting and painting, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And so you can start building up the density of what you're painting back by clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging. I want to go to history and undo that. See how it recorded all those brush moves? Okay, so I'll go back to my original brush move here. So that's how you would reveal more of the background. Now, if I wanted to close down the background and conceal it, I would paint with black. So I'm going to hit the little switcher arrow here. So I'm now painting with black. I'm still painting at 20% opacity. So as I click, it's slowly erasing the background. Click, let go, click, let go, click, let go. And you can see that I'm slowly starting to fix. See how each brush move is being recorded in history? Okay. Now be careful, because you could start running out of brush moves. And once you get down to a certain amount, it starts rewriting your top. In other words, it starts wiping out all of these up here, so you can never go back to this. But I'm painting with black. I'm painting on the mask, and you can see the mask is starting to close down as I paint. I'm going to go back to my crop state here. So if I brought up the opacity to 100%, this kind of shows you now that if I'm painting with black, what I'm going to do is really start erasing all of that background. And you can see what's happening. And see what's happening here to the mask? That what's being revealed is closing down. Go back here. Okay, so that's how you can make modifications in case that original lasso selection wasn't what you wanted. Let's say you didn't want this leaf right here. Okay, so I click on the mask And what do I have to do? What color do I have to paint with in order to get this leaf out of here? Okay, I have to conceal it, right? So I have to paint with black, but I want to paint at a very low opacity. So I'll bring my opacity slider down. I'll maybe make my brush size a little bit smaller. That's left bracket. And then as I paint, I can slowly start, you can actually click and let go. Just click, pop, and let go. And the more you do that, the more it'll start eliminating that area that you don't want. Okay. Not that you'd want to do that, but that's how you would eliminate that. Okay, so that should help you in vignetting a photo and then modifying that vignette if you want, and then bringing it into another program like InDesign or Illustrator, or use it in Photoshop that way. Okay, so type wraps, and yeah, I was gonna show you that in another lesson, but I think we talked about that, yeah, in 145. So. Alrighty, does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so I will see you guys next week, Tuesday. Have a good Labor Day weekend, and more fun and games next week.
You too.
Have
Thank
a
you.
great weekend.